I'm Kaitlyn Bristowe. Your session is now starting.
Welcome
to the Thank you for being here today.
Yeah.
First of all, I've never met you. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
For all of my listeners, could you tell us who you are and how you got into therapy?
Sure. My name is Gayane Aramyan, and I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I specialize in women's well-being as well as couples therapy. Since I became a mom 3 years ago, I started being really passionate about helping moms, and so that's kind of been my focus, but always geared towards helping women break generational cycles, helping couples communicate better, and so I've always been very passionate about relationships. My husband and I have been together since we were 16, and so cute, but also so hard, not easy. We had a little break in between, but since a young age, I knew I wanted to learn more about relationships because it took a lot to be in one when I was so young. And so I kind of got started in the field when I was 18, which was about 13 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, and I just went to my high school counselor and I was like, I want to do something in therapy. And she was like, well, you can't really sit in on sessions with a therapist, but let me see what I can find. And so she found someone she knew, and I became like an assistant at 18, and I kind of grew with that woman, with the therapist, and she was my mentor for 10 years, went to graduate school, did my hours with her, and then now I'm on my own and I have my private practice. In Sherman Oaks.
That's amazing because to know what you want to do at 18 is already crazy, but to know you want to actually like get into therapy and understand relationships and like, you know, I was at 18, I was like, boys are hot. Like, that's all I was thinking. I didn't understand how complex or complicated or difficult relationships could be. And where do you think the passion came from specifically for women's well-being?
I don't know. Well, let me tell you this.
Because I am a woman?
No, actually, part of my training and when I worked for the therapist before I got my degree, I became a certified anger management coach, facilitator. And for that, you don't really need a degree. You just need training.
Okay.
And so she trained me, and I started running groups as like a 19, 20, 21-year-old, which was really intimidating because it was court-ordered men, typically. Not to generalize, but that's what the groups were. And it was super intimidating, but it really taught me so much. And it taught me about how unaware men are about feelings, how they have such a difficult time about talking about their feelings. And then it was interesting because then when I started being in practice, I was gravitating towards couples and then kind of bringing in that voice from the male side and letting, you know, the woman know of what was going on the other side. And then I became passionate about like the woman's side. So it just, I don't know, I think it all played a role. And then becoming a mom, I just realized so much of motherhood is about, and not to make it about motherhood, but so much about it is our own inner child's coming up in our relationships and how we parent. And so I think that's been my biggest passion now is just changing that generational cycle. Like, we were told not to cry or to toughen up, and now I turn to my son and I say it's okay to cry. You can feel what you're feeling. And just those moments are so big for me, and I just want to radiate that to everybody.
That's beautiful, because I was going to ask you, do you think men are just wired differently, or is it because of what we've taught them, you know, our generations?
Maybe both, but I do think the messaging that not just men, I mean, women received those messages too, you know. Our parents did the best they could with the information that they had at the time. Nobody talked about feelings. Nobody talked about therapy. And so I think they did the best they could. And even my own parents, you know, I remember I was in graduate school and I was having an argument with my dad and I was crying and he said, "You're a therapist. You shouldn't be crying." I was like, "What?"
That doesn't add up.
I was like, I'm not a robot. I'm still human. So that just tells you that.
It's so interesting because I've obviously been very focused on, you know, what society has taught us about, you know, emotions or where we should be at in life or what we should do at the age of this, because I'm 38, single again, and I just get a lot of heat for it. It's so interesting. And in my brain, I know logically that this is because their generation or what their parents, like their generation, has taught them. And it's just so interesting because I see and I understand what people want for me, but I want to show them what I want for me, and it like doesn't align with their beliefs. And I feel like that's so much with even just, you know, what we've been taught.
Like they have their own agenda for you.
Yes.
And you want to live your own life.
Yes. And it's so interesting because, you know, you say even your family, like feelings weren't talked about as much. My family was so open with feelings, and we were very
That's
much
rare, by the
allowed.
way.
Yes. And I know that.
Yeah.
Like we were very much allowed to feel feelings, and we were always encouraged to like go down our own path and not do what everybody like else is doing. Like that was encouraged. So my whole life I've lived like that, but now having a platform, it's like, what? And I didn't realize,
because so many people didn't have that.
and I didn't realize how crazy that was to some people to just like feel your feelings, cry on social media, be happy on social media, share the good, bad, and the ugly, and feel okay with it. But now I'm starting to feel shame for it.
But you know why people react is because they have their own insecurity about feeling those things.
Right.
Or they have their own triggers that come up.
Okay, then let's talk about my reactions.
Yeah.
When I know that, like you say that and I go, I know, why does it still upset me so much? Is it because I also am not a robot?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're human.
Okay.
Because you're human.
Yeah.
Right? And we seek for society to accept us. And, you know, back in our parents' days or their parents' days, it was maybe people around you. Maybe it was in the other neighborhood. But like now with our phones, we're exposed to so many people at once. And so we're not just comparing ourselves to our neighbor, we're comparing ourselves to everybody in the world. And I think already impacts our mind in a very different way. So you can be confident about your feelings, but the second someone judges that, it's so normal to say, wait, am I allowed to? And then as a woman, I think that's a big thing of like feeling things and not being sorry for them.
Yeah, and not feeling crazy for them.
Yeah, this whole like women are emotional. It's like, you know, I think we are in touch with our feelings, but we were probably never given the tools to know what to do with them.
Right.
So I was going to ask you, like, even though you had that freedom of feeling things, did you really know what to do? Because I
probably didn't know what to do with those feelings.
Yeah, because I get that too. Like when I see clients in therapy, they'll have, you know, homes that they grew up in that they were loving and everybody talked about feelings, but parents still did not have the tools to say, okay, when you feel emotionally flooded, let's take a few deep breaths. Here's what you can do. You can journal. You can talk. Like they just didn't have that knowledge.
That's so true.
So maybe you were given the space to feel things, which was awesome.
Yeah.
But you probably didn't know what to do with the feelings.
That is so true. I still don't know what to do with the feelings. I mean, I'm learning and I'm trying, but let's talk about emotional flooding because I heard you use that term and it was a new term to me. So can you kind of explain exactly what emotional flooding is?
Yeah, emotional flooding is whenever you are feeling something, but it's uncontrollable. So you might be angry, but when you're emotionally flooded, it turns into rage. If you're anxious, it might turn into like an anxiety attack or panic attack. So it's like an uncontrollable amount of emotions that are just literally like flooding through. Typically that happens when something isn't processed.
Right.
So if you haven't processed a feeling, an emotion, let's say you've been anxious about something and you've been just brushing it under the rug, eventually that's going to build up and it's going to come out in a way of anxiety attack.
I always try and, you know, get to the root of what I'm actually feeling. And there's so many times where, like, I'm really proud of myself actually, because let's say 8 years ago, I remember being like just turned 30. I remember having like tantrums in a relationship, like actual childlike tantrums. And I remember being like, it's stronger than me. But over the years, I've done so much work that I realized I'm like, wait, I haven't done that. I don't remember the last time I ever had a tantrum like that, like in a relationship. Sure, I still get angry or raise my voice or like...
Because we're human.
Have panic and because we are human, not robots. Yeah. But I don't throw the child like tantrums anymore. Yes. And I'm like, yay me.
Yeah.
Yay me, you're not a 2-year-old anymore.
That's progress for sure. And I think with anger itself, it's not a problem to feel anger. You know, in couples therapy, I'll have couples come back and they'll say, well, we didn't fight this week. And I'm like, okay, that's not the point.
Right.
The point is fights are going to happen.
Yeah.
But we need to make sure there's repair. We need to make sure like you're communicating in a way that's respectful and kind. So there's so many steps to it. Just feeling anger is not an issue. That's just basic human normal emotion.
And I think that's a big one we were taught to not feel.
Yes.
Anger.
Yeah.
I feel angry a lot, and I've talked about this previously on my podcast.
Maybe for a woman,
but
right?
Yeah, I've sometimes when I'm feeling insecure or sad or threatened, I get angry.
And that's exactly. I'll explain.
Okay,
that.
please.
Yeah. So anger is, there's different schools of thought on this, but what I really believe in and what I saw when I worked with the anger management clients is that anger is a secondary surface level feeling. So we're usually feeling something at the core underneath that, and it's sadness, maybe it's fear. But interestingly enough, because it's almost like a protective shield, and it's much easier to show than to show the vulnerability that's inside. So it's much easier to say, I hate you, I'm so pissed off at you, than to say, I've been feeling really lonely.
Yeah. Why is that? Is that because we associate shame with feeling lonely, or
because it's too vulnerable? Yeah. Anger is a protective, it's a shield. It's like this primal feeling of, I gotta fight because there's danger, right? Yeah. It's like the way the brain was designed. Yeah. But there's no more like danger like that.
Okay, have you heard? The bird is the word? No, just kidding. Wella Professional's new line, Ultimate Repair, is the most premium line to date, and it was developed with 140 plus years of experience and research to deliver the very best. Miracle Hair Rescue repairs hair in only 90 seconds with key ingredients, AHA and omega-9 to rebuild the hair bonds inside the strands and replenish the outside barrier of damaged hair. Their bonding serum repairs hair damage in 90 seconds. I actually have it in my hair right now because I'm about to blow dry it. This luxury product has rich textures and floral scents, and designed for all hair types and textures. It's the perfect luxury leave-in spray treatment that everyone can benefit from. I'm telling you, once your hair dries, it feels so soft and it's so easy to use. I just spray the Ultimate Repair Miracle Hair Rescue as many times as needed after I get out of the shower. Then I just wait 90 seconds before styling, and that's it. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, just 90 seconds, allowing the product to work its magic all day. Plus, you don't have to rinse. I hate that. I hate when you have to go back in and rinse. No rinsing. Perfect for a gal on the go like myself. Even I have 90 seconds. And when I'm doing my thing all day, it just continues to repair any damage to my hair. It's genius. And you can try the Ultimate Repair Miracle Hair Rescue with 10% off the travel size on Amazon by using promo code 10VINE. The number 10, 10, VINE. Okay, I'm so excited because one of my favorite stores, Loft, is back and better than ever with their fall collection. I love a fall collection. It's a perfect modern mix of all day, any day pieces that offers endless versatility. This fall collection is definitely one to celebrate. It includes everything you need to build stylish, feel-good outfits from head to toe. This holiday season is their gift guide launch. Now, Loft can be your go-to, check everybody off your list destination, give gifts galore, both in store and online. Shop a mix of gifts under $35, festive finds, merry sweaters. Mama B is going to be spoiled this year. Loft has really cute, trendy pieces. I ordered a chic, long, modern blazer. It's so cute. And some stylish combat boots. Love my combat boots. I love that the pieces touch on all the season's most relevant trends, and they're always offered at a great price. There are fun pant silhouettes to choose from, flirty tops, midi skirts, sweater dresses, and fun outerwear that's perfect for fall. New arrivals drop all the time. Be sure to check them out. And as a thank you for listening, you can use code OFFTHEVINE at loft.com to receive $25 off your full price purchase. Exclusions apply. See podcast description for terms. So when you aren't able to process your emotions, how does that affect the people around you?
I would assume you're more on edge. I would assume you're so guarded that people can't really understand where you're coming from. Maybe you shut down a lot. Maybe you isolate a lot. Yeah. I think it can look different for everybody.
So I know we use the term tools in a toolbox of like, you know, you learn those tools through therapy and through experience. So it's nice to kind of have that filled so you're not affecting the people around you and you're able to. But it's hard to sometimes when they don't have their own and they haven't done their own work. But let's get into talking about the tools because you've got them. Your box is full, baby. What do you got?
Yeah. What you said about other people, we can't control other people. So even if someone is coming into me because they're going through something in their relationship, and maybe they say, you know, my partner doesn't want to come to couples therapy, but I want to work on myself. Sometimes just working on yourself can kind of motivate the other person to see
Especially
changes.
If you're not nagging them to go, you're just showing it through who you are. Yeah.
And then what can also happen is when you do your own work, you show up differently to the relationship. maybe at some point you even reevaluate if that's a relationship you want to be a part of.
Right.
But I think it's so important to just focus on you. Do your own work. Focus on your own triggers, on how you handle situations. And if you do all that work and your partner is still doing the things they're doing and you're still hurt consistently, I think it's time to reevaluate that.
Yeah.
So tell me, where do you want to, what kind of tool should we start with?
Like journaling, I think, is probably a good one.
So processing feelings?
Yes. So processing feelings. Sometimes I think people are too scared to process feelings because when you write and sometimes you're like, whoa, I didn't even know I had this in me, and you just keep going and you keep going. That sometimes can be scary to look back on it and go, I've got a lot of things going on, and it's too deep for some people.
So I would recommend, if there are things that are traumatizing from the past, there's trauma, there are things that you haven't really got into, that I would definitely recommend starting with therapy first and then going into journaling then.
Okay.
If you feel safe to journal, the way I would recommend to journal isn't just to write about how upset you are. So let's say something triggering happened.
Yeah.
What happens typically in the brain is, let's say you're with your partner, an argument happens. The brain goes into protective mode and the emotional part of the brain turns on and logic turns off. So we may say things we don't mean, we might do things we don't mean because the logic is just not operating. So again, the brain is designed that way to protect us from danger. That's how we survived back in the days. We don't need to do that right now, especially with our loved ones. So to rewire that brain, it takes so much practice. It doesn't just happen overnight. And it's really about pausing when you're triggered and to have some time to yourself, if possible, to process what just happened. So let's say something triggering happens and you beforehand make this plan with your partner and say, look, when we get into an argument, I might get really triggered. I'm going to need 15 minutes, maybe it's an hour. You decide that beforehand. So you're not just like, okay, I'm triggered, I'm out of here. Because that can send the other partner into panic. So you walk away and then you take time to, let's say, journal. And you don't write about how pissed off you are, but you ask questions from curiosity. What upset me? What about this is triggering for me? Have I felt this way before? My guess is, from a therapist perspective, this isn't something that just came out of nowhere.
Right.
It's maybe an unresolved event from the past, maybe a past relationship, maybe a childhood stuff coming up. So you have a moment to process, and then you ask yourself, what do I want from this person? Is it validation? Is it a solution? And then another important question is, what do I feel? Because the first thing you'll think of is, I'm angry.
Yep.
Okay, what's underneath the anger?
Right.
Maybe it's fear that I might lose him.
Yeah.
And that's more powerful than whatever else was going to come out of your mouth. So then you've activated the logical part of the brain, and you might come back, maybe if you're at a level 10, maybe you'll be at like a 7 or 6.
Yeah.
And the more time passes also, the more chemicals are being released. And so when they say, don't go to bed angry, I say go to bed angry.
Yeah, I always say go to bed angry.
Yes.
Because I'm usually over it in the morning. That's what I say.
Yeah. And that's because literally your brain is releasing these chemicals. And naturally, you might, obviously it's not going to go away on its own, but you're just at a different place than you were the night before.
The pause is so important, and that's what I'm really working on, because like I said about the temper tantrums, like sometimes I feel like things are just stronger than me, and so I've been really working on that. Do you believe it's like a muscle almost you have to build to like hold capacity?
Yeah, it's rewiring the brain.
Yeah.
Like you're literally in therapy, I feel like we're doing like a surgery of like rewiring the brain to operate differently.
People like me, I'm impatient, and that takes practice and a lot of time, but the reward is so worth it because it literally will change your life for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there is no perfection. Like I don't operate that way at all times.
Yeah.
You know, if my cup is empty, I'm not going to be like, I need to take a pause. Like, I'm human.
Yeah.
And in my own emotional relationship, that's not going to be as easy for me as it is for me to sit here and talk about it.
Right.
So I just want to set the standard of like, there's no end goal of you're just forever going to change the way you react to things.
Right.
But you can get to a better place with enough practice, that's for sure.
And sometimes it's like, how do you identify your triggers and root causes of emotions? Like, because like we're talking about how it's masked by other emotions. How can you really dig in and identify the root of what's triggering you?
I mean, I'm going to be biased and say therapy would help.
Yeah.
Therapy will help you to really uncover those triggers. You know, in therapy, we ask questions that you might not think of, that a friend might not think of. But if you want to try, you can definitely do that on your own, and it's to just sit with the feeling. Sit with it. Maybe it's through journaling. Maybe it's through asking these questions of, what am I feeling? And sometimes I'll have literally a list of emotions for clients, and they'll have to sit and select because it's so unnatural to us. We're so unaware of, like, I'll have clients that say, I had no idea this is how I felt. We don't have the language for it.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like I know what's going on in my head and my heart, but I like don't know how to say it, or I don't have a tool to, I don't know, kind of understand where it's coming from. And it's so overwhelming to me. I guess that's the emotional flooding. Like it feels like, and then I just cry because I'm like, this is too much. My brain is telling me one thing. My heart is telling me another. There's a lot of noise in the outside world, and I don't know how to get my feelings out sometimes. Like, I'll go to therapy, and she'll say one thing, and it unlocks something in my brain that goes, oh, yeah, that's what I was trying to say.
Yeah.
It's even, sometimes people think, like, well, I'm a 40-year-old woman. Like, I know who I am, but you don't.
Oh, no. I mean, I've had, when I did the anger management clients, I mean, I had people in their 70s come because they had to, and have this, like, life-changing moment of being like, I had no idea I felt this way all these years. So again, it's because we weren't given this kind of knowledge about feelings and how important vulnerability is in relationships, to feel closer to each other. Like, it's so much more powerful to say, I'm actually feeling so overwhelmed. I'm actually feeling so lonely, and I need you. But that's not usually what's said.
I'm speaking from personal experience. To me, I feel when I'm vulnerable and saying, I need you right now, it makes me feel so weak, where anger makes me feel strong and powerful. But really, on the receiving end of it in a relationship, they probably would, respond so much better to the first one than the second one.
Yes.
And it's like, I know right from wrong, but it's stronger than me. So how do you control that? How do you actually go, Kaitlyn, get vulnerable. You know where this is actually coming from. If you just say this, it's going to make it all better. But I'm like, no.
Because vulnerability is scary.
Why?
Because
if it works and it makes situations better.
Because there's potential for rejection. Whereas anger is this shield, right? That says, I'm not going to let you hurt me. And I'm going to say these things to hurt you so it doesn't get to me. But when you're vulnerable, there's a great risk, which again, because we can't control the other person, you don't know how they might react to vulnerability. Maybe they don't have space for it. But I think when you do your own work, you know that when people react the way they do, that's because of their own stuff. If someone can't handle you saying, I need you, then they're struggling with their own stuff.
Yeah, it's hard to not take it personally. I'll never forget in a relationship, I'm, of course, very stubborn, and I was never the one to apologize first. And this one fight happened, and I was like, Kaitlyn, just put on your guys' song, go sit beside him on the couch and hug him and say you're sorry. And it took everything. I was like hyping myself up for it, being like, come on, Kaitlyn, come on, like,
Yeah.
And I did it, and I was rejected. And that was truly one of the worst feelings in the world, because I did it, and he was like, don't. And I was like, what? So then in my brain, it went, oh,
never again.
Okay, never again, because it didn't work.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly. But what's the alternative?
I still don't apologize. No, I'm just kidding.
But what's the alternative? Then we have the shield and this anger, and then we protect ourselves, sure, from unpleasant emotions, but then it also creates disconnect, and that's the opposite of what human beings want. All we want is to be connected. All we want is to have this like connection to someone and feel safe with them. And so, yes, it's a risk, but I say it's a great risk.
Yeah, and even if it doesn't work out the way you want it to, that's again that's there.
Yeah,
It's
It is.
That's their own shit.
It is. It really is. The moment you realize people react the way they do is because of their own stuff, there's so much freedom. And the way you feel and the way you take things. Of course, you'll still take things personally as humans. That's what we do. But then again, if you sit down and really think about it and give yourself the pause to process. So when you were saying about when you get emotionally flooded and then you might end up crying, what I would say before trying journaling and asking these like prompts and questions, I would use what I call kind of like a BandAid tool, which is grounding technique, which is, breathing and just really like getting grounded, because that again gets you from level 10 to maybe a 7 or a 6.
And quickly.
Yeah. Yes. But it's a Band-Aid because you don't get to the root cause.
Right. It just helps in the moment.
Yes. It just helps you kind of get grounded. And then maybe you have the ability to even turn that logical part of the brain on and get curious.
My therapist laughs at me all the time because I come in so hot. I'm guns ablaze and I'm like, and then this, and that. And she goes, here we go. Just breathe. And she was like, just like take 1 second to just sit back and notice how you're feeling and take a breath. And I do. I go from a 10 to like a 6 immediately, which then
calms the
gives
nervous
me the
system
space to actually say how I'm feeling. I'm like,
yes.
Yeah, breathing, you'd think that just comes naturally to people.
No, I mean, my 3-year-old, like something upsets him. He's immediately like tantruming, right? And so I'm trying to teach him, like, let's take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And he's like, no.
Yeah, no. You're like, okay, you're not a robot either, but you also are 3.
Yeah.
You're still
but
3.
I brought that up because it's like, and the tantrum started so much earlier than 3. It's like, that's what's built in us. That's how the brain operates. It's just that doesn't serve us a purpose when we're in a relationship or we're trying to build connections. It doesn't help.
Right. I'm feeling really hopeful for whatever relationship I get into next, because obviously each relationship has taught me so many lessons. And in the last relationship, what I think we both really learned from it was don't let the rips build up without repairing them. Otherwise, it's too far gone. Yeah. I think we had really healthy communication at the beginning. I think we were both really good about quality time and communicating. And then once, in of all relationships, it happens where these little rips start happening and little resentments build. And instead of just in that moment, tackling it, starting therapy, understanding, using those communications, we both would distract ourselves with work or do this. And then we let those rips get too big to be repaired. And I really am like going into the next one, like, okay, Kaitlyn, fix the rip in the moment, take the pause. Like, I feel like I've learned so many things from each relationship where I'm like, one of these is going to work.
But you also can't be the only one doing that kind of work.
No, and and that's another thing. I'm going to have a resume. People are going to have a resume, and if you didn't go to Hoffman, you're not for me. Okay, if you haven't done a week of inner child work, if you haven't had some sort of like traumatic, I would love somebody who's divorced. Just give me someone who's done some work.
Been through life. Yeah.
Someone who's lived life and gone through it and knows what it takes.
Yeah.
To have a healthy relationship. And again, healthy including arguments.
Yeah.
But healthy arguments.
Yeah. Arguments itself is not an issue.
Yeah.
Everybody has arguments, but it's the damage that's done after the argument. It's the repair that typically doesn't even happen. And I think that, yes, if you don't talk about it, if you don't repair in the moment, it only builds and only gets worse, and there's resentment and so much.
After the heat has gone down and you are like, your adult self is online now, you can have that conversation, be like, what did you need from me in that moment? What was this really about? Like, you can, get to that place after some time and letting your nervous system calm down again.
And in a relationship, the inner child comes out in arguments and the things we need. When you think about, like, what do I need in a relationship? It's typically ingrained somewhere. Like, something happened in childhood where you learned, like, these are the things I need now in adult relationships. It's the things you seek for. And with the feeling question, like, what do you feel? The other question that many people struggle answering is, what do you need? What do you need from your partner? It's such a big question that it takes so long for people to answer. They might like even think about it for weeks. Sometimes it takes months to get to that answer. So I think that's another question that I think is very important to like do your own work, because if you don't know what you need, how is your partner supposed to figure it out?
Yeah, they can't. It's impossible.
My husband and I have been together since 16. we don't read each other's minds.
Yeah.
I know. We know each other. We've been 10 different versions of ourselves since we were 16, but we cannot read each other's minds. So I'm very big on saying, like, what is it that you need right now? Yeah. What do you need from me? I don't know. Maybe he needs advice. Maybe he just needs me to like nod and listen and just be there for him.
Yeah.
And so I would say that's a big thing that couples struggle with, is not knowing each other's needs and then expecting each other to know it.
Yeah, that's a really big takeaway, I think.
All right, if you know me, you know I am intentional about everything I do. So let me introduce you to some liquid gold, the Clarins Double Serum. Double Serum is one of my favorite Clarins products and anti-aging daily holy grail skincare product. Ever since I started using it, my skin has looked super glowy and hydrated, and it's called the Double Serum because it's 2 serums in one. It's an oil-based serum and a water-based serum, which actually mimic the composition of your skin. I'm even intentional about how I apply it. So instead of just slapping it on and rubbing it around, I start using their lymphatic drainage application techniques, and I am obsessed. Clarins also has Double Serum Eye, a plant-based formula specifically for that delicate skin around your eyes. So it pairs perfectly with the Double Serum. You just apply it right before. I love that the texture is a lightweight gel cream combo, and it makes my eyes look just brighter and hydrated and smoother. It's amazing. Go to clarins.com right now to try this iconic duo and see for yourself. Plus, right now you can get 10% off plus a free welcome gift. Go buy your Double Serum and Double Serum Eye and use code VINE23 at checkout for 10% off and a free 7-piece gift of skincare products. That's VINE23 to get your welcome offer only at clarins.com.
So I want to know if there's strategies for planning ahead, like anticipating an argument or how you're going to react to something for moments when intense emotions arise. Like, is there anything to do to prepare for it? Like I did in that one time, I was like, come on, Kaitlyn, you can do this. Like, is there something that, because we talk about after journaling or, you know, going to therapy and talking about these things, but what can we do to prepare for them?
Yeah, I would say with your partner, have a conversation about when things get heated, what's our plan? Because usually there's one person who withdraws, one person who pursues. Mm-hmm. And so especially for the person who withdraws, they need to set up a plan of when they're coming back. Because the person who pursues gets anxiety and needs to know when that person is coming back. So they need to have a plan. Mm-hmm. And it's just the way this person who withdraws processes their feelings. They need to be by themselves to really think about. I think it's good for anybody to just take some time and think about what happened and then go back into a conversation, because you're just emotionally triggered in that moment. Nothing good is going to come out if you're heated and you have a conversation. So have a plan in place. You know, is it 15 minutes? Is it an hour? And then to say, after an hour, I'm going to come back and we can talk about things in a calm way. Does that sound okay with you? Yes, it does. And then go from there.
I do feel like reflecting is part of like regulating emotions as well and understanding. I think a lot of times too, when I'm reflecting back on like an argument or something really bad that happened, I start feeling shame around it and being like, well, was it my fault or was it like, I feel some level of shame. So is there a way to approach self-reflection with compassion? Like, how do you do that?
I think thinking about what part did I have in this? Because I truly believe
accountability is very hard for me.
Yeah. And if you want to go there, do you want me to ask you why?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I think my mom's probably going to listen to this and go, stop blaming me.
They did the best they could.
Mom, you did better than the best. She was amazing. But she really, truly, my parents are incredible. But I do think they always wanted to fix something for me because it felt like I never really had to be held accountable for things. They were kind of always like, well, like, I don't know.
Can I tell you why?
Yeah.
Okay. So they wanted to fix things because, again, they were probably taught that negative feelings are not okay. So instead of seeing our kids struggle, we will do anything to fix it. So part of what I'm learning now as a parent is letting my child be uncomfortable, which is huge. Like my immediate reaction when he cries, I'm like, no, don't cry. Like, it'll be better. I'll fix it. I'll buy you a new one. I'll do this.
Yes.
And relearning that and saying, it's okay to be sad. Yeah, it's okay to be mad. I know you really wanted that, but we can't do that right now.
Yeah.
And that takes a lot of self-regulation in ourselves because we have to be okay with our child not being okay. So your parents just didn't want you to feel discomfort.
Yes,
and so then you probably learned that I don't want discomfort in my life.
I am getting better at holding myself accountable because I do, especially in this last relationship, I totally see where I went wrong. I could probably write a whole novel on where I went wrong. It's just more like my brain goes, but they did this. So that was my reaction to the, like, I make excuses for myself.
Well, I think you're protecting yourself.
Yeah.
From feeling the like, I guess the accountability of like, yeah, I had a part in this.
Yeah.
But I'm not perfect. I'm allowed to mess up. That's the self-compassion that many of us don't have that voice, is to say it's okay to mess up.
Yeah.
Because we were probably like, our parents just fix things so we don't feel the mess up. And, you know, my son will say just again, like, I so think this is like innate in them. He goes, Mama, you do everything right. And I'm like, huh? I'm like, cute, but no. Mama messes up all the time. He goes, really? You make mistakes? I'm like, all the time.
Yeah, because the kids see their parents as they're like their first heroes.
Yes. Yeah, so it's changing this narrative of like,
That's
no,
so true.
I mess up, daddy messes up, you mess up. We all make mistakes, but I still love you unconditionally, regardless if you make a mistake or not.
Wow. I think that's a really powerful parenting tool.
Yeah. It doesn't come naturally all the time.
No.
I'll tell you.
Because you feel so exposed as a parent. You're like, you think I'm perfect?
Yeah.
And you like want to keep that up. And you're like,
I know.
Dang it. I think a lot of, like, I feel like I have a really good support system, but I do have trouble getting feedback if it's not what I want to hear, even if I know it's right. Okay. How can I be more open to the constructive criticism?
Getting comfortable with discomfort.
Yeah, I'm really bad at that.
It's like hearing it and saying, okay, again, I'm not perfect. I'm allowed to make a mistake. I'm going to think about this. I'm going to reflect and see what I can take from it. I mean, not always will what people say to you be actually something that's right or that resonates. And so you might think about it and say, you know what, I thought about it. I don't think they're right. I still think that what I believe in is the truth. It's like giving yourself allowing yourself to mess up and be human.
And I do all the time. I think sometimes too, even talking to you and having therapists on my podcast, and it makes me vulnerable too, because I have to talk about my flaws and I have to hold myself accountable, because I also get so scared that the internet is going to weaponize how I feel in a weak moment against me online. And I don't know how to navigate those feelings of bullies online.
Yeah, I think, again, the world we live in is just, it's so different. These are things that, you know, our parents' generation and nobody had to think about these things. And so recognizing how unnatural this is for us to even deal with and that we're still trying to figure out. But for you to maybe own what's yours, like own what's yours, be confident in what you're doing. And then whenever you hear feedback, again, sit with it and see what comes up. You might be surprised that maybe you sit with it and you say, okay, I see some truth in that. Or you sit with it and you say, no, I'm pretty confident in what I said and I know what my values are. I think knowing your values is crucial in something like this.
Whenever I'm feeling really overwhelmed and like shame, I go, okay, I didn't hurt anybody.
Yeah.
You know, like.
And if you did, you're not in charge of pleasing everybody.
Right.
You're not in charge of people's feelings.
I feel like I am. People have big feelings on the internet, and it always seems to be my responsibility. But yeah, it's a lot.
But we can be triggered by anything. We as an individual have to be responsible for how we feel, what we do with it, how we voice that feeling.
Yeah.
You know, you can't be in control of all of that. Of course, we have to be sensitive to certain things. We have to be mindful, having a platform, but you can't have control over how they react.
I feel like there's a lot of parents that listen to my podcast, like a lot of moms. Do you have any practices for parents to try who are listening to this? Like any practices that you've learned as a mom? I think you've talked about a few.
Yeah.
Also, do you have like a Instagram page, website, like where people can do courses or something? Like, do you do that?
I'm working long term. Like my long term goal is to have some sort of a course. Okay. But I'm very passionate about preparing parents for postpartum, for parenthood, because when I became a parent, I was just clueless.
Yes.
Even though I was in the field, mainly about the relationship with your partner and how much it changes. And you can have the strongest foundation and it will still shake you to the core. And so really making that foundation strong before you have a child, if possible, learning how to navigate parenthood together, because every stage is so challenging. Yeah. I've had a really hard time in motherhood of just finding my own identity identity, keeping my career and being passionate about what I do. You know, and I'll tell my son now, like, Mama's going to work. And I love work. He goes, you do? But I want you to be by me all the time. I'm like, I do too.
Again, cute.
But I gotta go. Yeah. You know, because this is something so important for me. And so my big passion is just to help expecting parents, or even, you know, I sometimes have couples who come in while they're dating, then they get married, and then we transition to parenthood together. And so I love watching that journey and preparing them. Yeah.
I mean, truly changing lives out there.
Thank you.
You really are.
Thank you.
And you said, you know, you go to work and you're a mom and a partner, and as a therapist, mother, partner, all the things. How do you balance between your professional and parenting roles while also taking care of your own emotional well-being? Because, like, how do you find time for you?
Still struggling. You know, I think a big thing for me is I'm not going to do it all. I can't do it all. And again, that's a big thing with women, whether you have a kid or you don't. It's this idea that you have to do it all. I accept that I can't do it all. And so, you know, I think about these different roles as wearing different hats. So, you know, right now it's my professional hat. I'm here as a therapist. And then later on, my son has a school performance. And so I'll have my mom hat on, and then we'll be spending time with family. And then, like, a few times a week, I do like yoga or Pilates, and that's my me time. And so I just wear different hats at different times. I'm not ever trying to wear all the hats at once, because I think that's a recipe for a disaster.
Yeah. I mean, even to just compartmentalize it like that is still so hard, because there's not enough hours in the day.
There really isn't.
It's crazy.
There really isn't.
A lot of people, like even my sister sometimes, she's like, well, therapy's so expensive, which it is. And it is for a lot of people. But are there specific books, apps, or online resources that you personally love that you recommend to your patients for further understanding, like emotional flooding or managing emotions?
I'm like, as you're asking this question, I don't. So I don't know if you want I'm like, I actually don't.
You need a podcast. You should write a book.
Oh, thank you. Maybe one day.
That's so You're like, no, just go to therapy.
Honestly, I mean, there's options, you know, there's
so many self-help books too.
Yeah, there's a lot of self-help books. There's so many. So I feel I can't even.
Have you ever heard of the book, The Mountain That Is You?
No.
That one cuts me to my core every day. Oh, God, yeah.
I'll add that to my list.
Yes, so there's my advice.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there's options for therapy. There's low-fee clinics. There's, you know, insurance can cover it. But I think it's also, I remember when interestingly, I wasn't in therapy until graduate school, although I was in graduate school to become a therapist.
Funny.
Yeah. I had some experience in the past, but I hadn't gone myself. And I remember thinking, like, well, how can I afford it? You know, and I had a friend who was like, you spend this money on nails and getting your hair done and going out. Why not invest in, like, the inner you? And I was like, So I had to rethink my budget and, like, really think about it and invest in this. So I think, you know, if possible, maybe budgeting and doing something like that. But also there's low-fee clinics that's available for everyone depending on your location. So that's an option as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I have a little hypothetical thing for you. It's hypothetical emotional situations. So a few situations that might trigger different emotions, and then I thought we could walk through how to handle them. Okay, a heated argument with a partner or family member and emotions are escalating. What do you do in that moment?
Time out. You say, I'm feeling really triggered right now, and I don't think anything I say is going to be productive. So I need to take 15 minutes to myself, and I will be back. Can we continue this conversation later?
Now,
but that's so hard to do.
It's so hard. And then especially if the person reacts with, okay, or like they don't understand your process.
Yeah. But you can't control the other person.
Right. And that's something to remember in that moment too. Okay.
Yeah.
Constantly comparing oneself to others on social media, including feelings of inadequacy and low self-esteem.
One tool, I guess, that I would encourage people to try is to think of yourself when you're talking to yourself. What would you say to a friend who was going through this?
Yeah.
If you had a friend say, you know, I'm constantly, you know, comparing myself to all these people on social media and I can't do it and all those things, you'd probably be pretty compassionate. And you'd say, you're doing your best. Like, who cares what other people are doing? Just focus on you. And it's interesting because it's so much easier to say that to a friend than it is to ourselves. But I like that exercise because it shows you that you're able to say those words. You just got to look in the mirror and say it.
I am such a dork in the mirror. You should hear the shit I say to myself in the mirror. It's amazing. Like, if I'm ever having a moment, I'll turn the beat around real quick. And I have like an out of body experience where I actually feel like I'm talking to a different person. Everyone knows this because I've done this for years, but I like give myself mirror high fives and like pep talks. And the other day I was out and I just stopped and I looked at myself and I went, "Hi, you're doing great.
That's awesome.
You're doing really great. You're a good person, and I love you."
Aww.
And then I was like, okay, anyways, my lip gloss. Like I like had a moment. I do that all the time. And I remember probably 7 or 8 years ago, because it was when I first moved into my house, I put up a sign in my mirror that says, because I've always been really focused on outer beauty, knowing that inner beauty is the most important, but I'm a bit crazy about that. So I put a sign on my mirror that says, work on the inner beauty and the outside will fall into place. And I looked at it every day and I started having these conversations in the mirror with myself, like positive affirmations and conversations.
And don't you think it's changed
everything?
You know, there's research on that if you say positive affirmations to yourself, I think it's like for 21 days.
I'm going on 8 years.
Your brain chemistry changes.
Yeah, I totally believe it. I still struggle with certain things, but I totally, if I step out of that uncomfortable, like insecure me, I'm like, no, actually, I wouldn't rather be anyone else.
Yeah.
Like, I love me.
Yeah. That's the inner critic part of you that comes out.
Yes.
And typically that's like a childhood. Maybe it's from a past relationship.
Right.
It's like the little voice that just talks and tells us how terrible we are.
I know, I get so mad at my brain because I say this on the podcast sometimes. I'm like, aren't you supposed to be on my team?
Well, it's a part of you. It's not who you are.
That's a good thought.
When there's inner child work, it's called parts work, internal family systems. And it talks about how we all have different parts that show up and they were created at some point in our life.
Yeah.
And what they do is they take over. Instead of you being the self as the one that shows up, it's the inner critic. It's the anxious part of you. It's the angry part of you. And they all have this like inner battle of like who's taking the driver's seat.
Right.
And you just got to tell them to go in the passenger seat.
Yeah. Kick rocks.
Yeah.
That side of my brain. Going to social situations when you feel self-conscious, anxious, or overwhelmed in a group setting.
I would use some grounding techniques.
Like drinking a bottle of wine before you go. Just kidding.
No.
Just kidding.
Like the 5-4-3-2-1 technique. You can use some breathing techniques. So grounding, meaning when we think of grounding, it's like literally like right now I'm sitting and I feel these headphones on my head.
Yeah.
I'm feeling sitting in this chair. There's trees around. I'm in this room. Like I'm really tuning into what is present. So that can kind of reduce the anxiety. And like, let's say if you're having physical symptoms and maybe to have some affirmations on your phone, you know, even if you don't believe in them, just to have something where you're reading like, I'll be okay. I'm safe. If I'm really uncomfortable, I can leave. And maybe having like a plan like that in place. Maybe you have a friend that you know, but I would say grounding technique to reduce the anxiety and having a plan for yourself.
When I was doing the child work at Hoffman, we did like a spiral almost of what your brain does when mine was, okay, I'm going to an influencer event or something. That's what it is. And then here's where my brain goes next. Okay, well, this person's going to be there and this is going to happen. So I have to be this kind of behavior. And then I go to the next one. I'm like, oh no, but this person's body might look better than me in my dress. And then I might get photographed the wrong way. And then I start going into
spiraling.
Like a spiral, but then it's going back and looking at that and seeing, okay, what do I need in that part of the circle? What can I give myself here? How can I prepare for this? Like literally drawing it out on a piece of paper, seeing what your spiral is, and then talking through yourself each phase of it to prepare.
Yeah, I would say thinking of something we do with anxiety work is thinking of a worst case scenario. Again, if you don't feel safe doing this on your own, this is a good time to see a therapist to process it safely. But you think of what's the worst case scenario? Okay, they photograph you the wrong way. And then, and you literally go through these thoughts and what happens at the end and you're like, I guess I'll be okay. But the mind creates this like disastrous, catastrophic result.
Doomsday.
Yeah. And so you act like that's going to happen. But when you really sit and reflect in a way like that, then you can get through it.
What about unexpectedly running into an ex partner in public? I'm so scared of this because I'm like, I think it would be good, but what if it's not?
Yeah. If you feel like you're in a place where you can greet that person, do so. But if you feel like if you just look at them, it's going to break you apart and you're going to just fall apart, protect that.
Yeah. I do feel like this is important because there's, the holidays coming up. I feel like there's a lot of tension in families and a lot of feelings come up, especially because we all get triggered when we're around our family because that inner child comes out. Yeah. So stress when, attending a family gathering and dealing with challenging
relatives.
Yeah, like the family dynamics.
Yeah. I don't know. It's repetitive, but that's what comes to mind. I can't control them. I can only control what I think, what I feel, and how I react. So if I notice I'm getting triggered, I'll do, nowadays I don't pull out my phone anymore because it's kind of like it's in me now. It's programmed for me to have this kind of thinking. But even if it's like maybe you don't want to pull out your phone, you just sit down and think, why is this so triggering for me? What about this is triggering? How can I react differently? Can I change them? The answer is no. So what can I do to protect myself? Can I, maybe box up this feeling, and then when I get home, I'll think about it. So I would focus on you. And how to protect you. How can you communicate in a way that, shows empathy and understanding and knowing that whatever their stuff is not yours.
Yeah. I think it's such a profound thought that is so hard.
It is so hard.
Yeah. It sounds easy.
Yeah.
But we all know it's not.
But you can practice it in those moments. Like, it's not me. It's not me.
Yeah, it's not me. That's what I'm just going to say for the rest of my life. It's not me, it's you.
But we all do that.
Yeah.
I might say something that might trigger you. You might say that might trigger me. We all come in with these, I like to say it's how we view the world. It's the lens we view the world with. And it has to do with childhood and all these factors and relationships and how many times we've been hurt. And so, I use silly examples like this water bottle can be very triggering for me because I don't know, whatever example with that. And then for you, it might be just a water bottle. So it's the same item, but for both of us, we have a different perception. And so taking that when you go into these holidays of everybody reacts to things because of their own past, and it has nothing to do with you. And if it does, then you reevaluate and have a conversation about that if it's needed. But most of the time, people are just triggered because of their own stuff from the past.
So true. Trigger also became a buzzword, but I'm like, there are really some, a water bottle could actually be triggering to somebody,
I never know what to say. I'm like, the candle, the water bottle.
You never know. That's the point.
Yes.
Well, I appreciate this conversation so much. I feel bad because I'm like, yes, a free therapy session.
No, you had such a calming presence, by the way.
Really?
Yes.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Sometimes I think maybe because when I go into my therapist, she's like, calm down. And I'm like, am I a calm? I feel like I've got big energy.
Very calm presence. Yeah.
Wow.
It was very easy to talk to you.
Oh, thank you for saying that. As a host of a show, that means a lot to me. So thank you. I always hope to make my guests feel comfortable. I loved everything you said.
Thank you.
Where can everybody find you?
My Instagram at Therapy with Gayane. That's Gayane, or my website, therapywithgayane.com. And I see clients virtually throughout California and in person at my office in Sherman Oaks.
What do you prefer?
There's nothing like in-person therapy, but after the pandemic, virtual therapy is so accessible to so many people.
Yeah.
And especially for moms with newborns, it makes it so easy for them to be in therapy.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I love that that's available now.
Well, thank you for what you do.
Thank
you. You too have a calming presence.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
I'm Kaitlyn Bristowe. Your session is now ending. And if I'm being honest, I wouldn't mind a rating and review.